What's up, everybody? Thanks again for joining me on the next episode of In the Pink. And if you are not familiar with what that term means, that is a term that was coined way back in the 1500s, before pink was even a color, and it had to do with wishing someone their optimum health and happiness. So this week we are looking at gut health, and we're filling in that blank with autism. But first, we're always gonna start out with a what we know. So my first what we know. We know that the term autism was first used in 1908 by a psychiatrist by the name of Eugen Bleuler. And he used this term to describe a psychiatric patient, schizophrenic actually, who had withdrawn into his own world. And the Greek word autos means self, and the word autism was used by this Bleuler to mean morbid self-admiration and withdrawal within yourself. And my next what we know. We know that in 2023, the CDC reported that 1 in 36 kids were diagnosed with autism. And this is an increase from even 2021, where it was 1 in 144. So autism is definitely on the rise. And my last what we know that autism is more prevalent in boys than girls. About 4 in 100 boys are diagnosed, where only 1 in 100 girls. All right, it's time to move on. Let's move on to the guts roll in all this. Well, first we're gonna back up the train a little bit here, and we're just gonna define what autism is. So ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, is a complex neurodevelopmental condition. It affects communication, cognition, behavioral, and even social interaction. And it is a spectrum disorder. Did you catch that? So what that means is that the symptom profiles are going to vary from individual to individual. All right, now let's really move on to the guts roll. So we've covered this a bit in the past, where we refer to the gut as being the body's second brain. And this connection between the gut and the brain is called the gut-brain axis. Basically just a communication pathway. And there have been multiple theories put out there that are trying to explain this autism business and what happens. Where is the breakdown? Where is the disruption between the gut microbiome and the brain? So the first theory has to do with dysbiosis, suggesting that dysbiosis plays a part in autism symptoms. And this dysbiosis, of course, leads to leaky gut. It causes pinprick holes in our gut lining, where toxins then can leak out into the rest of the system. And this increased permeability then causes inflammation, and the inflammation affects brain function. Okay, the second theory is just the same thing, kind of backwards. Starting with the inflammation, and inflammation is more prevalent in patients with autism. Now, the inflammation we know is the body's immune response, and it's how it protects itself from harmful stimuli. However, chronic inflammation is what gets us in trouble. Now, studies have shown that autistic individuals have more inflammatory markers going on in their bloodstream, and the chronic inflammation causes gut dysbiosis, and the dysbiosis causes the leaky gut, and we already talked about that picture. Okay, the third theory has to do with substances that our healthy gut produces on a regular basis, neurotransmitters and short-chain fatty acids. And we know that both of these influence brain function and therefore are going to tie into autism. So let's look at the neurotransmitter side first. Let's pick one, serotonin. We know that serotonin is critical in our mood and in our thinking, but it's more than that. It also plays a key role in sensory gating and processing information, behavioral inhibition, appetite, aggression, sleep, mood, and brain development. There are studies that have been done backing up these differences in serotonin levels in kids with autism and kids without. And in fact, one study found that 30% of the people with autism had abnormal blood levels of serotonin. Okay, let's look at the other side, short-chain fatty acids. We're gonna look at butyrate and propionate. Butyrate improves brain function, while propionate impacts brain function, which leads to changes in behavior and aggression in autistic patients. In fact, there's even studies out there where they take the microbiome from a healthy individual and they transplant it into an individual with autism symptoms, and that symptom profile improves. In fact, one study said remarkable improvement in GI symptoms alone. Research is even showing that certain types of bacteria are responsible for certain symptom profiles. So for instance, lactobacillus plays an important role in improving anxiety and social behavior symptoms. And in another study with mice, lactobacillus reuteri found to have great significance in improving social behaviors, while Bacteroides fragilis had great significance in improving anxiety. So obviously research is really drilling down even to the specific microbes and how they affect behaviors. Pretty fascinating, isn't it? All right, let's move on. Let's just touch on a couple case in points that better describe what I want to cover. Let's kick off this with a study done in 2013. This was done in mice. Now the researchers found that altering this gut microbiota resulted in changes in their behavior. Now let's move on to a study done in children. This study validated the dysbiosis part of this, that yes, children with autism have very different microbiomes. And when I say different, I mean they have got more pathogenic bacteria populating their gut. And what we covered earlier, what does that do then? Repeat after me. That causes inflammation, and the inflammation causes leaky gut. And of course, the inflammation in the brain affects cognition, mood, and behavior. All right, the next research study had to do with improving the gut microbiome and showing that yes, that did improve behaviors. Now this one took place at Arizona State University, and they did fecal transplants. They transplanted fecal matter from healthy individuals into patients with autistic behaviors, and those symptom profiles improved. And on top of all this, there was another study done in mice where they had their gut microbiome manipulated. And the study showed that using these commensal or good gut bacteria strains fixed their leaky gut and reduced the symptom profile. Okay, and the last case in point I want to talk about here is gonna focus more on this intestinal inflammation that seems to be a big common denominator in these patients with autism. Now this study was done out at Harvard School of Medicine, and they were using a mice population. But what they found is that infections during pregnancy led to higher inflammatory markers, which not only affected brain development in that unborn mouse, but also altered that maternal microbiome in a way that primed the newborn's immune system and basically set it up for future inflammatory attacks. And after 4 more studies at Harvard, they did boil it all down to this, that the central nervous system and the immune system problems shared an environmental driver, maternal infection during pregnancy. All right, let's move on to some healthy practices. What are some things that we can be doing on a daily basis to improve our health picture? Well, when it comes to this autism, autistic kids are generally pretty picky eaters. So we are gonna cover diet in length today. So there's gonna be 2 strategies, right? We need to remove the problematic foods, and we need to be adding in beneficial foods that both repair and nurture this gut lining and the microbiome. The first thing that was studied, gluten. Removing gluten from an autistic child's diet has benefits, and here's why. Autistic kids have a heightened sensitivity to gluten, and what we covered in weeks past with the celiac business, the gluten and the zonulin and increasing the permeability of that gut lining, it's all related. So if we can minimize or even get rid of gluten in the diet, it's gonna be beneficial. Okay, the next food that seems to cause problems is casein. Casein is a protein that's found in dairy, and it just so happens it has a similar makeup to gluten. And in studies, they've just shown that kids who take that out of their diet tend to have better symptom profiles. What was recommended is at least 30 days of no dairy products at all. Okay, now that we've talked about what we're gonna eliminate, let's talk about what we need to incorporate. Now the real goal here is to be incorporating whole foods, so we are getting the vitamins and the minerals that this child is lacking. Because we already know that with a damaged gut lining, absorption of nutrients is going to be tougher. So let's start with the first thing, probiotics. Incorporating a probiotic that is gonna get in there and populate the gut, planting good strains and getting those commensal bacteria thriving. But not only a probiotic supplement, we also want to be using probiotic foods. So things like kombucha or kimchi. And as time has gone on, and maybe you're starting to introduce a little bit of dairy, how about a good quality yogurt or kefir? Okay, the next thing, prebiotic fibers. We want to be feeding the probiotics that we are planting. Now, prebiotics are resistant to us actually digesting them. They are food for our gut bacteria. And some foods that are rich in prebiotic fibers would be sweet potatoes, carrots, asparagus, squash, leafy greens. Getting the whole food, that is key. Now, another thing I read about would be introducing digestive enzymes or even products that acidify the environment. And of course, all that plays into digestion, which is why digestive issues are a common problem with these kids. Now, another thing I read about is essential fatty acids, so omega products. Now, omega-3 is really the one we're going for here, but it comes usually with omega-6 attached to it. 1-to-1 ratio is gonna be best. Omega-3 has both the DHA and the EPA, which are very, very important in a developing brain. Now, supplementing with omega-3s has shown to improve aggressive behaviors, attention deficit behaviors, dyslexia, and autism. And not only that, it lowers the inflammation in the body. It's kind of a big deal. The next one, vitamin D supplementation. The next one, collagen, which is a connective tissue, but it's very important in repairing that gut lining. And the last one, vitamin B12. And for some reason, autistic children also tend to be low in B12. So yes, consider supplementation, which is gonna roll me right into the best part. Let's talk plexus. Let's talk plexus and how plexus can play a role in your health picture. So what I'm doing here, I'm gonna link the products right here. So if you wanna click on that video, that's gonna take you over where we can talk about specific products. I'm also gonna list that in a pinned comment. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging with me till the very end. And if you are new to this plexus train and have no idea what I am talking about, I'm gonna list in that description box my link. Get on there, nose around, ask me some questions. Curiosity will get you on this train every time. I'm also gonna list in that description box some videos I've done in the past. So covering the products that I go over, also some playlists that we've had in the past. The current playlist is gonna be right up here in the pink. So those will be easier for you to sort through if you haven't caught them all yet. And you might just wanna join me here again next week, because what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. It affects everything, which is gonna lead into many more episodes of In the Pink.